So awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first Tutor Forum of the year. As you know, we are the Association of Colleges for Tutoring and Learning Assistants. My name is Timron. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator for ACTLA. And we are excited to host some awesome presenters here to talk to us about how best practices and how they foster meaningful engagement in this online environment that we are still getting used to within our practices. As I mentioned, this meeting will be recorded, so that way folks will be able to participate and engage with the content that's shared today. If you haven't already, please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself, say hi, call out where you're from. It's really cool to see what areas are being represented nationally and even sometimes internationally. We are going to talk about fostering meaningful engagement because, one, the ACTLA community voted that this was the topic they most wanted to hear about. But this is also a topic that's within ACTLA's online tutoring standards. So these are guidelines on how to bolster and improve and make sure that your online tutoring, online SI, online academic coaching, what have you, program is meeting certain criteria or things to just maximize the student's experience overall. So I'm going to pass the mic on to our presenters, but we're going to do things a little bit differently than we have in the past. So in the spirit of fostering meaningful engagement and stuff like that, we're actually going to have one of our folks model an icebreaker, an activity they use, taken from experiential education, to model maybe a way that your tutors, your SI leaders, or maybe even yourself before the start of the meeting to kind of boost that engagement from the very get-go. So Rebecca, I pass the mic off to you.
Cool. Hi everyone. Thanks, Timron. So I want to share with you, in order to facilitate introductions, something I like to do, which is, hopefully on the screen you should see my collection of pinback buttons. And I'll tell you, this is an activity that I learned from Jen Stanchfield from her book. She's an experiential educator. So some of these pins are a set that she offers, and some of them are ones I've added. So what we're going to do is, as we introduce ourselves to you, the panelists, we're each going to choose a button that represents how we are feeling right now, and we're going to explain, we're going to tell you which button we chose and why, how it represents the way that we are feeling. So I'm going to go first. I usually like to model activities when I'm going to ask for vulnerability. It seems only fair. So I'm Rebecca Tedesco. Hi. I'm from Southwestern College here in San Diego, California. And I am working as a professional tutor in the Writing Center. And I also am an SI leader with the SI program at our college. So the button that represents how I'm feeling right now is the one that says, let's just pop a few dozen yards of bubble wrap and call it a day. And I picked that button because I'm just feeling that way on this Friday, that it'd be fun to just play a little bit, make some noise, and then go home because it's Friday. And that's the feeling that I'm having right now. So when I do this with students or with staff, I usually ask them to choose who's going to go next. But in this case, I'm going to popcorn over to Jay.
Cool, thank you, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name is Jay. I'm the director for academic affairs and student academic support here at Hartnell College. Excited to be here, excited to join everyone. Happy Friday. The pin or button that spoke to me was keep calm and carry on. I think that's what we need for this Friday with everything that's going on. So just to keep keeping on and looking forward to this weekend. I'm going to go ahead and popcorn to some of our amazing staff and tutors that are joining us too. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Valerie.
Hi, my name is Valerie Provencio, and I'm a writing specialist in the Writing Lab at Hartnell College. And the pin I am going to choose is "We Can Do It," mainly because when I'm working with students, this is something I'm always telling them, you know, like, we just need to hurry up and get this done with, and then we'll move on to your next assignment. and it's really suiting because actually after this meeting, I have a meeting with the student to help with the paper. So, and then I'm going to popcorn Dylan, one of our tutors.
Hi, my name is Dylan Herrick. I am also a tutor at Hartnell College. I tutor in writing and business. And actually, the pin I was choosing as well was "We Can Do It." I was just thinking of, this is Friday, we can do it. The weekend is upon us. We are almost there. And so I'm going to go ahead and popcorn over to Carla.
Thank you, Dylan. Hello, everybody. My name is Carla Gonzalez. I'm also an academic support specialist here at Hartnell. And at the array of all the buttons, I'm thinking about the yin yang button. I kind of really looked at that one because it's been feeling a lot of pull and push. And in a lot of ways, I know that my own personal motivation has also been something that I work on to motivate students, because there's been a lot of that like opposites that are in challenge. So that's something that I've been also very willing to be open and flexible. Has been a lesson for me throughout the last few months. So I'm going to let Lisa take on the next part.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Fischler, and I'm also a writing specialist at the Writing Center at Hartnell. And the button I would have picked is that sarcasm matters, because in the next week or so, I think it's going to be really important that humor be part of everyone's life. And I'm going to popcorn it over to one of our tutors, Joseph Randolph.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, I'm Joseph Randolph. I'm a STEM tutor at the Hartnell Tutor Center. And I was also gravitating toward the yin yang pin, because I think it's very important that we have balance in our life. And lately as a student, I feel a little unbalanced, and I'm seeking that balance, and I'd like to encourage that for everyone else. I'm not sure who to pop.
Yeah, we have one more person. Sorry, we're gonna go ahead and call on and Rosa, one of our chem tutors.
And I'll leave it to you, Rosa.
Thank you, Joseph. Hi, guys. My name is Rosa Sanchez. I'm also from Hartnell College. I tutor physics and chemistry. The bit that called out to me the most is they tricked me. This isn't my safe, happy place. And the reason why I chose that was because I feel that way usually whenever I'm taking new classes, and because these classes are usually very challenging. And I'm always like, hey, this isn't what I expected, but here I am. I'm ready for the challenge.
Cool. Thanks everyone for sharing just a little bit of what's happening in your world and some vulnerability with all these people that you don't even know. I appreciate that a lot. And there we go.
Awesome. So thank you, Rebecca, for just modeling one quick and easy way that we can boost engagement whenever we're working with a peer, a boss, a student, what have you. So just to give everyone a quick rundown of what the next 45 minutes or so is going to look like, we're going to spend about 25 minutes with our guest panelists. So everyone that just introduced themselves, I'm going to ask them some questions relating to how we foster meaningful engagement in this environment, and just share their expertise and their, what they would do. We're really happy that we have multiple levels of learning assistants here with us. We've had folks that are currently or have been in coordinating roles before. We have professional tutor perspectives represented, and of course, our wonderful students perspectives represented. So we'll be bouncing around a few different folks for each question, just so we can just have as much diversity as possible. So we'll do this for about 25 minutes. In the meantime, if you have questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat. Jay has invited some of his professional staff to help answer questions directly in the chat. So if you do have questions that come up, we can start addressing them sooner rather than later. And then after about 25 minutes, we'll pull some of those questions and ask our panels to some of our panelists to address those questions as well. And then in the last 5 to 10 minutes, we will wrap up with some closing announcements, some thank yous, and some exciting things down the pipeline coming out of ACTLA. So Jay, Rebecca, and company, are we ready? All right, let's do it. So the very first question I have is really just to build a little bit of context for our attendees. So at your respective colleges, what is a student's typical experience going through tutoring, SI, academic coaching, and everything else you have to offer on your campus? And feel free to jump, either one of you, feel free to jump in.
Go ahead, Rebecca, I'll let you start.
All right, cool. Thanks, Jay. So at Southwestern, I should emphasize that I am a professional tutor at Southwestern, so I'm not in a coordinator role. I don't have the 30,000-foot view, but essentially, from what I can tell, we have a few different options right now for students. So we have tutoring going on in different subjects, including writing, and students, we're using Pisces right now. So students go into Pisces and they can meet with a tutor one-to-one or for a group session. And then as an SI leader, I lead my SI sessions in Zoom for students in classes that I am assigned to. And for me personally, right now I have one async class and one synchronous class. So I'm engaging with students in different ways. So in terms of what the experience is like for them, if it's a synchronous class with an SI leader, an SI leader shows up and is in the class with them and then has sessions outside of class. If it's async, then they get a message in their Canvas shell. I did a video for my students introducing myself, and then I tell them when the sessions are. And we also have a link in our Canvas that goes directly to Pisces, so they can click on that to go through all the screens to connect with a tutor. And that's how they are connecting with support at the moment on our campus.
Yeah, similar to what Rebecca said, our college is using Zoom a lot. I think for the last couple of weeks or months, I would say we got pretty good at using Zoom and trying to anticipate some of the surprises that comes with Zoom updates and all that stuff. But we rely a lot on our Canvas, since that's what students are most accustomed to in the classes that they're taking, especially with everything being online. This past fall and summer, or actually start of summer, we implemented a virtual desk that allows all the students to come in and be greeted by one of our staff members to really kind of connect with them and figure out what they need help with. There's going to be setting up appointments. Sometimes it's just figuring out tech and making sure that they're able to connect with us before they start working with one of our amazing tutors, our SI leaders, or our staff. Once they go into their breakout rooms, this is where we really rely on our tutors and our SI leaders to use their expertise, use their knowledge of what they've learned from the classes, and even when we're face to face, and try to do some of those things within their sessions to be able to engage folks, understanding that this isn't typical, right? This is not, we can't necessarily keep doing the things that we were doing in the past, but as much as possible, how do we make sure that we're making students feel welcomed, when there's a computer that's basically dividing us right now. And so I'll open it up to any of my other folks that might want to respond to this one, but that's generally how we're making, right now, that's what it looks like. Folks connecting to us via Canvas, going through our virtual desk, and then using all the different technologies that we have access to make sure to make it kind of easy for them and remove some of those barriers.
Yeah, and I should just add really quickly that we have another option at Southwestern that I did not mention, and the coordinator of that program is here, so I should be sure to mention it. We also have the online writing lab, or the OWL, which is an asynchronous writing tutoring support, and that's accessed through a page on our website. They log in with their school ID and submit answers to some questions and writing that they want a tutor to look at, and then the tutors get back to them within a few days. So sorry, Lisa, the OWL is super important and also a great support at Southwestern.
Absolutely, all good.
Yeah, and I'm gonna call on Dylan, one of our writing and our business tutors, to talk a little bit more about things that he's doing within his sessions, what students kind of experience in the typical session with him.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, so after the students have checked in through our virtual check-in, they'll be assigned to our breakout room where the tutors are typically waiting for the students. When they come in, I greet them, and tell them about myself. And I ask them, what class are they taking, and I may even ask them who their professor is. Sometimes I do understand and know what requirements different professors will have. But throughout the tutoring session, I will always refer to their prompt, right, the instructions that they have. And typically in writing, I will try to get the student get them going, and always having them refer to the prompt, and I'll let them start writing. And then once they've written for a little bit and they have some content, we'll go through, we'll review it, and we'll see how we can structure that content they have created throughout their essay.
Very cool. Does anyone else want to build on to that, or are we good to move on to the next question, Jay?
May I add?
Go ahead.
Specifically, something that I've noticed new, which I thought was a challenge at first, getting to understand how to use the tools on Zoom. So now that the sessions are directly on Zoom, the fact that we share our screen has become a tool for me that I directly ask students, are you comfortable sharing your screen? And then I explicitly explain what I would do in their situations. And then they have these questions that I wouldn't really have in the sense of on person to person, because we have all of this background steps that we assume. So here I'm able to quickly share links, and then we just pop them on the chat and open them and talk about them. We can also start sharing the OWL Purdue in a way that I haven't done before. So that page that we were just reviewing, I copy it and I put it in the chat and I say, now you have exactly a click away exactly to the resource that we're reviewing. So in that sense, I've really enjoyed kind of that way of taking the tools to the next level, but really asking the students to step up their kind of interaction with the technology in a way, because it's taking it more above the cell phone interaction that we have all the time, and using it so that we do capture these understandings of how to do research. And then from there, how to put it into your writing. And then from there, how to analyze what's what. But I really like that direct kind of tool access that I'm getting to know more and more how to use.
And
Awesome.
sorry, and one thing I just want to add to Carla is that in the beginning of the semester, we hosted a welcome-a-thon for 2 weeks where students were able to come into a session and actually gain experience using Zoom, Canvas, and other tools we may be using for tutoring or even in their classes to help them. So it really did help them getting the hang of it.
Cool. What I love about Carla and Valerie's response is it kind of directly feeds into the next question, which is kind of the big reason why we're here and what we want to hear about. So we are in this new online environment. Learning assistance does look a little bit different than what we long for and wish for from the pre-pandemic days. So the big question that I really want to ask is, how do tutors, SI leaders, academic coaches, etc., what are you doing to foster more participation, to build that collaborative environment in your sessions and really promote that active learning that we love to see in person in this new online format? So Carla did a really great summary of some of the ways that Zoom's tools have been able to increase access and be able to kind of bring at the forefront of what they've been talking about. So this is for pretty much everybody on the panel. What else can we be doing to make sure that we are fostering participation, collaboration, and active learning?
Can I answer that one?
Please.
So actually building on what Carla said, she and some of our other academic specialists and also the tutors, and it's a thread that's going on in the chat boxes, is actually personally reaching out and going to the classes that are synchronous and actually presenting to the students or getting them involved in workshops, like Carla was doing reading strategy workshops at the beginning of the semester. And I think those have been very successful in terms of having the personal touch.
May I add to the Zoom tools discussion?
Go ahead.
Oh, As a STEM tutor, I utilize and I think all of us STEM tutors do, we utilize the whiteboard a lot. And it's difficult sometimes because the students don't necessarily have access to drawing tools. So there ends up being a lot more dialogue and we have to ask a lot of questions. And so as a tutor, so as not to do the work for them, we ask a lot of questions and we actually kind of have them dictate what gets written on the board, which seems to work pretty well to keep them engaged because the pen doesn't really move unless they're speaking. And that's the best way that I've found to get engagement from the students and to get a sense of if they understand the material and where we are, how we understand each other. And on top of that, like Carla was saying, she can now use the OWL Purdue. So now if they ask me a question, which I'm not in their class, so I don't necessarily know their subject matter, I'll actually take them with me on a Google search and show them how I would go about learning this material, as they kind of caught me off guard sometimes since we're a walk-in center. And I can show them how it's possible to use the internet as a tool to search for this information to complete your classwork, which a lot of them aren't familiar with that. They're kind of stuck in the book and with the materials that have been provided, but this gives us a way to introduce them to the idea of searching out these answers themselves on the internet.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for sharing, Joseph.
Can I add to
Any
that?
other? Yeah, please. Continue
Alright,
building
so-
on the less I talk, the more you talk, like the better. So please
I'm
go
an
for it.
embedded tutor for chemistry, and the way I foster participation is I start by giving them an example of my own, and then I tell them this is how you do this. And after that, I'll be like, hey, okay, this is a chemistry problem now. Give me the answer through the chat. And so I'll give them a minute or two. And then after that, they'll send me their answers through the chat. And then I'll answer them back and tell them if it's correct or not correct. And then they go back and check their work. Of course, this is hard to do because sometimes I'll send the wrong person the wrong response. And I'll be like, hey, you got this correct. And the person will be like, hey, I haven't sent you my answer yet. So it's hard sometimes, but it's manageable. So that's one of the things I do.
Cool. That response actually kind of relates to some of the things being shared in the chat. And I think it's really related to this and as well as our next question. So it sounds like one challenge that comes with trying to foster meaningful engagement is maybe a lack of engagement from the other side of the screen, where maybe a tutor, or someone you're tutoring or somebody in your supplemental instruction SI session is responding. So what are some strategies you're employing or you would promote to try to get the more resistant folks to open up and share and engage with you? And this is for any of our tutors, SI leaders on our panel.
Yeah, so I saw something scroll by in the chat. I think it was Edward who said a strategy for engagement is make the space welcoming, whatever online space it is. And Edward mentioned using music. So I always have music on when my students come in to the Zoom room for SI. And by the way, I also saw someone ask about what is SI. So just really briefly, SI stands for Supplemental Instruction. It was created in 1973 at University of Missouri, Kansas City, and it consists of essentially group learning sessions that are led by either a peer or a professional staff member with knowledge about the course. And then the sessions are supposed to be collaborative and interactive. And it's called supplemental instruction because it's meant to supplement what's happening in the classroom. So, anyway, but yeah, music and having, creating some kind of check-in. So we did the pin back button example earlier. It doesn't have to be that complex. Sometimes I just have up on the screen when they enter this week's check-in question, or like, first, welcome. Make yourselves comfortable while I sign everyone in. We're going to start at whatever time. And then today's check-in question is, what is a food that represents how you're feeling right now, or whatever you want to do? And then I'm asking them to think about having it up on the screen. I'm having them think about their answer to that question as I'm doing the administrative work behind the scenes. And then once we get started, it's immediately a conversation. And I have music playing while they are thinking about the question and while I'm signing them in. So they don't just come into this silent, awkward space where they don't know what they're supposed to be doing and no one's saying anything, and it's weird. The first like 30 seconds of a student's experience can determine a lot about how they engage once you get started. So I would encourage you to think about how you're creating that space, what it's going to feel like to that student coming in.
May I add to that? I think that it's one thing that's really cool about Zoom. I don't necessarily remember names very well, but we're all wearing a name tag in Zoom. So we can easily use the student's name, which already makes things more personal. And simple things like asking people how they're doing, I think goes a long way. And if they vent their stress to us and we can validate that stress, or as a student, I often share that stress. And that kind of validation, I think, fosters a relationship quick off the start. And once that relationship starts, I feel like it does make things a little bit easier to cover material and work with that student.
Yeah, very well point. I mean, many of the things you all are talking about are things I'm trying to emphasize with my students as well. Is, learning assistance isn't purely just this academic experience. I like to think of it as a holistic experience. And one thing I've observed on my campus, at least, is supplemental instruction, tutoring, academic coaching. These are some of maybe the students' only kind of synchronous live touch points with another human being on campus. This environment has, I think have been really isolating for folks with actually engaging with campus and getting to talk to people and meet each other. So I feel like a lot of things you're describing is addressing some of those additional challenges that maybe we didn't think of as explicitly, but it's still there that, these spaces are there to also build community, relationships with our students. The next question I want to ask, I think kind of really just continues the vein of conversation we're on, and is just what are some other challenges that you feel like you're having when you are supporting a student and trying to engage with them online compared to when we were in person? And I think the more important follow-up question to that is, what are you doing to minimize some of these things? So we've already hearing some really great ideas with utilizing some of Zoom's tools to build that interactive aspect again, building community, so creating a space where students can interact. So what are some other challenges you're coming across, and what are you doing to overcome them when fostering meaningful engagement, of course?
Can I speak to that?
One
of the things that we're talking about, and Jay and I have taken the class, is Equity 101. And so the whole thing about equity-mindedness is one of the real challenges, I think, and the intersection of the different insecurities, food, financial, housing, that the students have is an incredibly important challenge that we're facing. Some of the students don't have a place to go to be able to log in, so you find them in their cars. So I think that is one of the major challenges we're facing, and I think we're looking at ways to try and even figure out who needs the help the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as a staff, like when we had to move everything online, that's a constant question that we ask ourselves a lot. Are we creating these unnecessary barriers, understanding that there is this digital and technology divide among our students, that COVID has really kind of exacerbated all of these inequities that we see, happening in our society, but now our students are even experiencing it even more, right? And so I think the point that Joseph made is a really important one. I'm glad he said it about, having the name tags. We've heard in different webinars, if you know, refer people, not programs, right? So I just thought about, like, when folks are coming into our virtual desk, we're always saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and have you work with Joseph, or I'm going to go have you work with Lisa. And so just having that connection of just saying names and introducing each other that way, I think has been really helpful. Thinking about it from on a larger scale, somebody asked a question about like making sure students have access to us. That's been an issue, where students aren't able to have Wi-Fi or, just different connectivity issues. This is where I appreciate Zoom to have that call-in feature, right? Just having them call in and having us kind of work through some of those tech things if we needed to, just to make sure that they're able to connect with our staff in a way. And then another part of that too is making sure our staff is really aware of all the different resources. If it's going to be any emergency funding that's available, somebody put on there that, requesting or making sure that they have access to a hotspot. a Chromebook, like all of that stuff, making sure our folks know. So when Joseph or Rosa or any one of our other tutors is working with a student, if a challenge comes up, they can reach out to one of the staff members because we're all together in this Zoom community, right? And make sure we can get that student helped and get the resources that they need. But, you know, all the things that we're talking about, I think really just kind of shows how difficult of a transition this is for our students and also for us. And we're trying all these different approaches, right? To make it feel like this in-person connection, to make it feel like students have that sense of belonging in this learning center community and make it happen in a virtual environment, which I think is challenging, but I also think that, you know, we're doing some good things that, you know, we can continue, you know, once we get to that point of moving back face-to-face, whenever that's going to be.
Yeah, and I would just add to that so an article that I read recently is one by Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry, who are from San Diego State, right in my neighborhood. And they offer 3 lessons learned for distance education. Their audience is reading teachers, but it applies to all different types of learning. And one of those lessons is infuse social emotional learning in what you do. What made me think of that was hearing you all talk about how important it is to check in with your students and your people right now, not just your students, but your staff, your colleagues, everyone, your boss, you know, if you can do it in a way that feels good, comfortable. So if anyone's interested, I'll put a link to that, the citation for that article in the chat here. But there are all different ways you can do that. One of the first steps, though, is just to think in that dimension, to ask yourself, what's the student's experience going to be like with me over this next hour, or with my staff if you're a coordinator, and you know, bring in training that you might not have done before that addresses that affective dimension of learning, because it is so important always, and especially in the middle of a pandemic.
I would like
Awesome.
to add,
Please
if I
do.
may,
Of course.
in a sense, because what we're all speaking of in a sense, I really have had experiences that, and I like that in bringing up equity and also social and emotional. And within that, very holistically, that's the lesson, right? But I wanted to share with you that I have had very, very intense moments with students because of the isolation, being in shelter in place, and with all the complex realities that we all live in. Most likely I was the only person in that moment, especially to connect this way of release. And so for me, that was not something I was prepared for, but yet in the moment, and as we all kind of react, you're kind of holding the space for a student. And within that,
Definitely.
you're really kind of like a container of it. And what I've learned from it is really, one, there's no right or wrong, but really being present is enough. And then it's really challenging to go into an academic goal, but it's possible. And then from that, I really like the reminder of looking for your resources and reaching out, because I'm the one saying it to folks. You know, it's part of what I do, letting others know that I'm a resource. And part of that work is to reach out. But that's something that I find it really challenging for me too. That way of being like, you know, it takes a lot to ask for help. And so bringing into that space of how do I support students the best in this scenario, it really did take me out of my comfort, but it has so much let me evolve in ways that I think has brought me closer to the team. And also, you know, creating those relationships with students, it's just in the moment that it's all worth it.
Yeah, to jump off of Carla's, one thing that I like to do with students that I work with regularly is I like to introduce them to all the members in our department. So I'll introduce them to Jay, Lisa, even Frank, and our admin person, our admin administrative assistant. because, you know, we're not only are, like Carla said, we are their release, but we're also their connection to the campus. And that's one thing that we really promoted, like on site, but that's something that I'm noticing, that we're even becoming more of that connection between students and then Hartnell College itself. And that's something that I think we do amazing in, but it could be tolling and hard because students open up about so much, just, you know, about so many hardships and during these times, and it's really hard. But whenever those situations come up, we, like what Jay says, we refer them to people and then try to help them to the best of our abilities.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I love the emphasis on really addressing the human behind the screen, right? You know, who is this person? What are they coming with? How can we engage with them in such a way where it's not just tutor, tutee, SI leader, student, but person to person? And how do we use that relationship to kind of generate that the overall engagement, not just in the session, but with the campus overall? One thing I'm interested in hearing about, and hopefully as a way to transition further into our discussion is, you know, I'm hearing a lot of great examples in these, like the moments as they come up. You know, when we're in that moment with the student, we're having these interactions with them. But one of the most important things for us as learning assistance practitioners is, how do we get them to come back? How do we encourage them to come back? How do we build the engagement to such a level where they want to return and use services again, or maybe connect some of their folks or some of their friends to your programs? So if any of you can speak to that, you know, how do you get students to come back and stay engaged with your Learning Center programs, you know, throughout the semester on your campus? I think that'd be great to hear, given what we've already discussed so far.
Yeah, I think I can chime in here for this one.
Please.
Something I'm starting to develop is create videos for students to make Microsoft Word and Google Docs work for them. And so just recently, Google Docs put a citation tool in there. So now students can start putting all their citations in there and can have their bibliographies and text citations kind of generated for them. And Microsoft Word is behind on an edition. So there are some changes I'm going to have to make to the videos just to make sure that it is accurate. But these are some things I can mention to the students, like, hey, you know, I know we were working on how to make tables in APA format. Well, you know, you can refer to my video in my module that we have in our Canvas course shell. You can refer to this, so they can come back to the lab, watch these videos on how to, you know, manipulate these programs to work best for them.
That's awesome. So it's providing kind of an asynchronous way to engage with you even long after you had that face-to-face, or whatever we want to define face-to-face in this environment.
Right. Yeah.
That's cool. Anyone else want to share about how do you encourage folks to continue staying engaged with the Learning Center, tutoring, SI throughout the semester?
One thing I would do is, in the beginning of the semester, I asked our students if they'd like to create a long-term appointment. So that's until the end of the semester. We made a few accommodations where we did that. And they come in regularly. They like to come in and check in about their writing assignments or anything reading, writing. A few of them are taking a few classes. And another thing is too, when we're ending the session, I usually ask them, okay, are you feeling okay? Or do you want to make another session you know, within this week or next week? So we're always kind of planning ahead, just to even double check, or even sometimes they'll mention, oh, I have so much homework. I'm like, oh, do you want to check in later about this? And then I set them up with that appointment, because we do get pretty booked up. And so that's one thing I'm always saying, like, you know, I want to see you. I want to make sure that you get this assignment done. Let's make an appointment right now so that you can ensure you get to come back and see me and all that stuff. So.
So important, Valerie, what you're talking about, continuity with the same person. You know, it's great if students have a good and comfortable experience with a person one time. It's better if they can come back and have some continuity, because who knows, maybe it's an island in the storm for that person right now. And that is so much of what we do. Even before the pandemic, many of our learning centers are places where students know they can come and find someone who will help them. Even if we don't have the answer, we will walk with them to, back in the face-to-face days, we'll walk with them to where they can get the answer, or connect them to the person that they need to talk to, and create a warm handoff. And however we can do that now that we're online, continue to do that, is so important. And it is something that we offer the campus community that they might not get everywhere.
I guess I would say too, like if you have systems that are, if you have any tracking systems in place right now, definitely start looking at that, because what we've noticed between spring and even fall now is the number of returning students that we have coming back. And so I'm interested to know, and that might just be even shooting them a survey and just saying like, hey, what made you come back, or something like that, to kind of get an idea of what is it that's helping students back. But now that we're talking about it, it really does make sense when we're thinking about when students come to our virtual desk, they're asking for some of our tutors and our SI leaders and our staff by name. Right. So if they're asking for my name, like we've made that connection, right? Which is so difficult to do, especially when we don't have like a physical space for them to come into, and for us to be able to greet them and work with them face to face. I think one of the other things too is just connecting with the faculty has been a big part of this, right? One of the things that Valerie, Lisa, and a couple of other folks have done, inviting whole classes. Like we have a counseling class that our counseling faculty offer. We invited that whole class over to our space to kind of walk them through it, right? Just to kind of hook them into our center. And then they know 2 people, 3 people from our center. So just opening it up in that way and kind of thinking about other ways to introduce our space and make it welcoming for classes, offering faculty to hold office hours if they wanted to, just any which way we can get folks to get into this Zoom room, right? And then we can kind of figure out how to keep them engaged. We've been also sending out updates to students that are in our Canvas pages on a regular basis, making sure that we're including validating messages in addition to like, logistical stuff, right? Like we're about to close, for the holidays and stuff like that, but making sure they know we're here, especially when we see that little lull, where we don't see students for a little while, just to remind them like, hey, we're here, we got you. So I don't, all these things we're trying to see if it's making an impact on students to help them keep returning and coming back. But I think it is really our staff and our tutors and our SI leaders that are really making students come back and do the work that we do.
And I see some people in the chat are asking about, once they come in the door virtually, then they're so grateful and they're so excited. Mm-hmm. But how do you get them to show up? How do you get them in the virtual door? So one thing that I like to do is I will ask one of my students or tutees, like, hey, if you thought this was cool, would you tell 3 other people at Southwestern about what we did? You don't have to tell them what we did, but just tell them about what it was like, and encourage them to come. You can also, if you're doing SI sessions, you can ask the students, where it's all centered around a single class, you can ask them, next session, can you bring 2 people from our class? So, if it's a synchronous Zoom class, chat those people in class, or a lot of times they're already in touch with each other anyway, outside of class. So bring 2 people next time. And then when those 2 people come, ask them to bring 2 people next time. And now you're going to have a nice, big, hearty session, because once they come, as people are saying in the chat, they see the value and they come back. But it's a scary thing to do just on your own, to step out like that. But if someone's coming with you or bringing you who's done it before, it's much easier.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So, like any other meaty, fun conversation, our timing has definitely been adjusted a little bit. First of all, I want to appreciate for sure everyone that's been responding to questions in the chat, both from our panel and also folks that are just participating via the chat. We do have time to bring in a couple of questions I think we can bring a little bit more emphasis or attention to before we start saving the last 5-10 minutes for wrap up and final announcements and things like that. So the one question I think that stood out to me that Jay mentioned a little bit earlier is that this whole situation has, I think, exacerbated a lot of the equity gaps that we knew existed, but in this online reality, it's even more of a reality, and it's even more of something that we have to be very cognizant of in terms of addressing and supporting students. So I just want to ask this question from the chat: how are any of you adapting your services for underrepresented students or students that are experiencing these barriers, whether it be just funding or just having inconsistent internet or Wi-Fi, students with physical learning disabilities, English language learners, and just students that are suffering from the digital divide in the first place. How have you kind of retooled or reimagined some of your programs to better support these students? And Dylan, I saw you unmuted, so you want to take the first crack?
Yes, just quickly, I know that Hartnell College here in Salinas, they offer Chromebooks and hotspots for their students that need it. I myself use the hotspot, and I find it, I mean, it works very well. And, you know, those students that do, you know, have trouble with reliable internet, it is definitely a great option for them.
Awesome. So really helping students get connected to some of the greater campus resources and hopefully alleviate some of those issues of access. Jay, did you want to add on to that since I see you're muted?
You know, in the past, or I guess in the past, we really work closely with our DSPS program, and we still do, working with our Veterans Center, working with our foster youth and our Guardian Scholars program, EOP, all of those different things. We tried to make sure that connection is still there. Some of the things we offer to do, you know, one of the things with Canvas, the way we have it set up without getting too technical, is students got to enroll in those classes, you know, to be able to get access. What we started doing is, like, if they're part of TRIO and in these special programs, if they refer them, we'll go ahead and automatically enroll those students into our Canvas pages, right? Let's see if there's a way to minimize that barrier. But I think that's a larger, like, discussion for the college or university to have, is to figure out, you know, if students are having those difficulties trying to connect with learning centers and learning center staff, then I would probably guess they're having similar issues trying to connect in the classroom too, and be able to get those things done that they need to, right? So I think in those situations, we really got to treat it as what that individual need is. There's a student that's been reaching out that worked with our staff, and this is something I didn't know because they reached out, but they reached out, they worked with our staff really closely before we went to campus closure. And so they're really kind of hesitant about doing this online tutoring thing. So now we got to figure out how do we support them, because we might realize there might be some digital technology divide issues that are happening, and really figure out what is it that student needs, and then what is it within our capacity to be able to support them. And then this is where I really rely on our staff to be able to let us know, like, if something isn't working and we need something, then I feel that's where it becomes our job and our obligation to make sure we advocate for our staff, our tutors, and our students, right? Because we might be able to see and experience something that the other folks aren't seeing on campus, because we're seeing students in a different way. So that's like I don't have a right answer for that one, other than saying, you know, making sure we're connecting with those groups that are any categorical programs, but also too making sure that our staff, our tutors are participating in equity-minded professional development, understanding some of the issues that are happening right now, and even before right now, right? And making sure we stay engaged in that, having those difficult conversations about race, about thinking about why are we experiencing some of these inequities, not just within our institution, but as a system as a whole. So it's a difficult one, but I think one that needs to continue happening if we're really going to keep making sure that our students are successful, given the current situation that we're in.
And I would just add to a big yes to everything you just said, Jay, and an air high five from San Diego. And also I would add, for students with disabilities, I'm a learner with disabilities myself. There are I see it as there are two stages of offering support. So before students show up in front of you on your screen, talking with your accessible education center or your disability services to make sure that you have options that you know how to use if a student needs an accommodation to make Zoom or whatever environment you're using work for them, especially since a lot of students don't have access to the same assistive technology that they once had on campus, because the campuses can't always provide licenses for the software for students' computers if they're not getting a tablet or computer from the college or university, and sometimes even if they are. So knowing what your options are and helping your staff understand what options are, if someone needs captions, for example, which is a pretty common request, how to make that happen. And then once the student is in front of you, talking with them about what works for them and what they need. So if it's a one-to-one session, that conversation can happen, you know, right then and there. If it's a group session, one of the things I love about Zoom, for example, is I can have a private chat going with a student while I'm doing something else with the other students. So actually, disclosure becomes easier because they don't have to disclose to anyone. They can just directly message to me and ask for what they need, and I can work it out, and nobody ever has to know that we had that entire conversation. So there are some positives, I think, to the online environment and supporting students with disabilities, whether physical or learning disabilities.
I love the two major points of emphasis I heard of, like, really making sure you're maintaining and building partnerships with other people on campus to make sure that if students do have particular needs that are communicated in their tutoring sessions, that we can work collectively as a whole on campus to address that. And I loved what you were saying, Rebecca, that there are some tools and some things that have maybe enabled us to open up these conversations and to maybe have more direct communication, fruitful communication about supporting that student. So unfortunately, we are running super tight on time, but as I was talking to the panelists earlier, we really want to showcase our guest speakers and their students on this topic. So we have about 5 minutes left. So first and foremost, I really do want to thank our amazing panelists, Jay, Rebecca, and then everybody from Hartnell College. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your expertise. I've definitely learned a lot, and I also felt validated by some of the things you were saying, because I think this environment also exacerbates the question, are we doing this right? Does this make sense? So hearing just the overlapping things that we've been doing with everything you've been saying in like such confidence, I feel so much better about what I'm doing as well. So thank you so much on behalf of ACTLA and everyone else. Everyone that's in attendance, we're going to have an ACTLA board member put in a quick survey on today's Tutor Forum, just so you can give us a little bit of feedback on things that went well, things that didn't, or things that can be improved on for future Tutor Forums. On behalf, as the ACTLA professional development coordinator, I really want these to be as productive and insightful and effective for everybody that joins us. So I really appreciate that. Before we ultimately close things off, I do want to invite a couple board members to share a couple of exciting developments and updates from ACTLA. As I mentioned at the very beginning, fostering meaningful engagement is one of our online tutoring standards found on the ACTLA website. So I actually want to pass the mic off to Lindsay Laney, who's been doing a lot of great work with ACTLA's online tutoring program certification, and some exciting updates with that. We will also briefly give you a quick save the date that Ted just dropped in the chat, that ACTLA is going to resume and have its conference in 2021. It will be online Wednesday, April 21st to 23rd. I know there's a lot of good questions. I know there's a lot of good discussions being shared. Some stuff we did not get to, but that's okay, because at the end of April, we can have way more discussion, way more panels, way more different things that we can, we'll have more time to dig into some of the stuff that we discussed. So Lindsay, why don't you go ahead and speak to the folks?
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So my name's Lindsay Laney. I have been working with the ACTLA board now for over 5 years, and we have launched a newly developed online tutoring program certification, which who could have foreseen this, that all of this would have come about and we would have been online at the same time that we'd be launching it. So this fall, it is now live. The application is online on the ACTLA website. So you can go ahead and check it out and save the date for Thursday, November 19th. We have a certification toolkit session where we'll actually answer questions about the application and review some things about it for you all. So again, that's Thursday, November 19th, 11 to 12:30, and that's Pacific time. Save the date has been sent out on the ACTLA listserv and the Learn Assist listserv. And then the link will be sent out as the date nears, and that is a free event. That question has come up. So please check out the ACTLA website and you can then see the application. There's also the standards on there as well that are super helpful for all of us that are developing our online tutoring programs and really trying to support our students. Thanks, y'all.
No problem. And we will also include a flyer for that online toolkit session on Thursday the 19th. When I send a follow-up email to everyone in this forum on the listservs Lindsay just mentioned. So you'll hear it verbally, you'll get to see it visually. We'll make sure to supply that. Again, if you haven't already, please complete the short Tutor Forum survey so we can get some feedback on developing the next Tutor Forum. Last but not least, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, ACTLA will have its online conference Wednesday, April 21st through Friday, April 23rd. It's a save the date for now. Be on the lookout for additional announcements as they come up. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Rebecca, Jay, and the folks at Hartnell College for sharing your expertise. We really value it. Hopefully we can have other opportunities for collaboration in the near future. And again, thank you for all of you that decide to spend part of your Friday afternoon / evening with ACTLA. We cannot be the organization that we are without all of you and your engagement and your interest. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful Halloween if you celebrate, and we will be in touch soon. Goodbye. And you can end recording, Christina. Thank you.